Okay, so we're on there. So welcome everybody. It's nice to see some familiar names in our attendee group today. This is a Bay Vision virtual meetup. We started this as a physical meetup in the Bay Area quite some years ago, a few years into the prehistoric times before COVID. And since about 2020, we moved this to a virtual online event. So on the one hand, you know, it's we're missing out on the in-person interaction and the pizza and the beer and everything. On the other hand, we get the opportunity to bring in speakers from all over the world, including Sophia, who will be speaking today from the Weiss Center in UCL. So we've been doing this sort of as our way to connect with the academic community and with the industry community, bringing you know, the latest research in computer vision for medical applications. A bit about our company. So we're RSIP Vision. We create visual intelligence software for medtech, focusing mainly on medical devices, on interventional and surgical use cases. We work sort of across the spectrum of applications for surgeries and procedures. So from the pre-op stage planning, for instance, using X-rays and using AI to do 3D planning of orthopedic surgery. We also work with for intra-procedural applications, such as using surgical tools to do virtual measurements during a surgery, automated analysis of ultrasound clips, guidance for the operator of ultrasound devices, reducing the user dependence. And of course, we and our partners in the medtech space are very cognizant of the fact that because you know, we're pulling in all this data, this will hopefully be very useful down the road for analytics. So understanding outcomes of procedures, understanding which type of plans are suitable for which patients, etc. And our goal as a company is to provide differentiating technologies to the medtech industry. We have solutions and software modules that are baked into medical devices and have been used in many clinical procedures. And of course, we're sort of in the trenches here and doing the day-to-day work together with the industry. But we're always very, very interested and curious hearing about you know, the cutting-edge research that goes on in the academic world and understanding where things are going technologically. So today our speaker is Sophia Bano, a senior research fellow at the Surgical Robotic Vision Research Group at the Wellcome Weiss Center at UCL. And Sophia, as I mentioned earlier, for those who logged in 2 or 3 minutes early, Sophia and I chatted, and really she and her group and her colleagues are doing a tremendous array of research on medical computer vision, from fetoscopy and ultrasounds to surgical video, many very wide range both of technologies and of medical use cases. So I'm very pleased and honored for the opportunity to host Sophia at today's webinar. Just a word for the audience. So you're very welcome to type in your questions for our speaker using the web interface. Hopefully it should be quite straightforward for you. And then at the end of the talk, I'll share probably a couple of the questions of the audience with our speaker so that we can have some conversation around this. So without further ado, Sophia, I will make you the presenter, and the floor is yours. Here we go.
Yeah, I believe you can see my full screen, right?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, yeah. Thanks a lot, Moose, for the introduction, and thanks a lot, RSIP, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the research that we are doing at Weiss Center. So today my talk is covering the topic of artificial intelligence-assisted surgery for next-generation intervention. Welcome to this talk, and just before I head into the topic, let me give you a little bit introduction of where I'm coming from. So I am a part of the Wellcome EPSRC Center for Interventional and Surgical Sciences, in short WISE, at UCL. We are located in the heart of London in UK, and very close to all the major attractions in London. And we are doing very exciting work together with clinicians, engineers, and scientists. We work quite hand in hand for building and coming up with innovative solutions that can be translated into clinical practices, having direct impact on the clinical or healthcare system. So in WISE, I am associated with I'm actually part of the surgical robot vision group, in short SRV. This group is led by Professor Daniel Stoyanov, and within this group, we are covering a wide range of application areas for different surgeries. We are working on computer-assisted intervention and surgical data science techniques, designing these techniques for various types of surgical procedures with a particular focus on minimally invasive surgery. We are also working on computer-assisted diagnosis and medical imaging side. And also a part of our team is also involved in surgical robotics and soft robotics, designing and developing these robots, which can enable highly precise and robust and safer surgery. Today, my talk will cover some of the work that I've been doing as part of the SRV team, and also I will cover some of the topics in journals that our whole group and my colleagues are working on. So just to give you a little bit of context about AI in surgery, AI in surgery basically has the capabilities to improve patient care through providing assistance to the surgeon, through providing support, data-driven decision support during the surgery, and providing context-aware assistance during the surgery. So an OR of the future, what we are visioning is will have capabilities where surgeon will be able to have the sense of different steps or workflow of the surgery, what kind of instruments are currently in use, or what kind of instruments are available to use, what are the instruments used in different phases, for example, or what are the different activities or action taking place in surgery, providing semantic information of the surgery. And if there is a possibility of an error occurring, maybe the AI system can alert the clinician of these kind of errors. So in all, kind of giving the context of the whole environment, the surgical environment, and taking reducing the cognitive load that surgeon face during these minimally invasive surgery where the environment is quite constrained. Another aspect in this regard is towards surgical and cognitive robots, where currently a lot of surgical robots are being developed. One of the very common commercially available surgical system is the Da Vinci system, which is used widely in clinical practices. None of these existing robots, or the ones which are being developed, have any AI capabilities. So what we envision is that we can design and develop these robots and also equip these robots with AI capabilities so that they can make this surgery even more precise and safer, and at the same time, of course, supporting the surgeon. So in these two examples, you see the a soft robot that we have been developing at WISE, that is for intratympanic steroid injection. And over here is a pneumatically attachable flexible rail, which is showing a pick and place task for organ repositioning. So my talk today is covering quite a range of topics within the context of AI for surgery. I'll be covering about AI for fetal well-being and surgery, surgical scene understanding, workflow analysis, surgical workflow analysis, which is one of the very first step towards understanding a surgery. Then how we can enhance surgical view. I'll be also talking about the current developments that we have done in gastrointestinal endoscopic vision for classification, detection, and reconstruction, and then also equipping the soft robot for target identification and visual serving, some of the developments that we have done very recently. So surgical environment or minimally invasive surgical environment, we can actually classify it into two broad categories. One based on the environment. So one is where the camera is quite near to the surface or the organ, and the environment itself is quite wide. So such kind of typical example is of a laparoscopic surgical procedure in this kind of environment. The other environment can be considered as narrow and confined environments, such as natural orifices or tube-like structures, which are deforming as well. So a typical example is gastroendoscopy. So basically endoscopic vision, where a flexible scope penetrates in the organ for localizing any abnormalities inside the organ or for treatment. So I'll be covering the developments in both of these environments in my talk today. So let's first talk about laparoscopic environment, where particularly I am going to talk about fetoscopy. Fetoscopy is, I've been working on this area for a few years now, and we are the trendsetters in coming up with mosaicing, which was a very challenging problem to solve in this particular domain, and I'll talk about it later in detail as well. So fetoscopic surgery, basically, it's a minimally invasive surgery. It is used for the treatment of twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. So basically, in this syndrome, the flow of blood between the two fetuses becomes uneven. As a result, the donor experiences much slower growth, and the recipient, because of the excess of blood it is taking, is at a risk of heart failure. So for the treatment of this condition, fetoscopic laser photocoagulation is used, where fetoscope is a very miniature endoscope, where a typical laparoscope has a diameter of about 10 millimeters, while a fetoscope has a diameter of no more than 3.8 millimeter. As a result, the camera feed that we obtain for fetoscope is quite poor as well, and then we only have a monocular camera available in this setting. So during this procedure, the surgeon visually explores the surface of the placenta, and then identify the abnormal connections or where the vascular anastomosis sites are. So while doing that, the surgeon is mentally registering a map of the whole environment in his head, and which is at times is quite a lot of load for the surgeon. Then the surgeon revisits these locations and then photocoagulate these or laser ablate the vessels to disconnect the vessels which are providing excess of blood to the second fetus, so that the flow of blood between the two fetuses becomes even. So this procedure particularly requires a clear view of the placenta and a clear view between the ablation tool and the target vessel. In the context of fetoscopy and also in the context of laparoscopic surgery, there are a lot of challenges involved during the procedure from clinical perspective and also from technical perspective, from the visual perception or the AI that we want to develop for these kind of surgeries. From clinical side, the field of view is quite narrow, and the environment is quite constrained. The scope can only be steered in a few directions around the remote center of motion. The view has very poor visibility because of the fluid particles floating around, because of the reflection from the light, and also because the visibility is poor because the cameras are very low resolution in this particular setting. From the technical side, of course, poor visibility is a challenge here as well. Alongside, there is, because of the fiber scope, there is a honeycomb pattern, occlusions, and very varying scene. There is a lot of interpatient and intrapatient variability, and the views are changing very dynamically. All these accounts for adding up to the challenges in developing techniques, AI techniques for this kind of procedure. So one thing that we can do to support surgeons during this procedure is basically creating an increased field of view image while they are scanning the organ, the placenta. This is, we can call it video mosaicing or image stitching. So this can help in minimizing surgeons' cognitive load, and it can aid in better localization of the abnormal vessel sites. So we can say that from computer vision side, or people who are coming from computer vision background or attending this talk, we say that, okay, image stitching, it's actually a solved problem in computer vision. So all of us, we have our smartphones, which can create very nice panorama of natural scenes wherever we point them to. So what's different here? So in the fetoscopy world or endoscopy world, the videos are very different, and the way they are recorded, the imaging source is very constrained, which adds up to the poor resolution. Then the scenes are quite textureless, and they are deforming as well at times. All these make the existing mosaicing algorithms fail in this particular scenario, where the feature extractors like shift surf, they tend to fail here as well, because there are no distinct features in present in these scenes or environment. So we have been working on fetoscopic mosaicing from last few years, and one of the network that I came up with a couple of years back was based on deep regression. The network used patch-based learning, between taking patch from the same image with known transformation with control data augmentation, and learning using this on various types of fetoscopic recording captured from different modalities. Then at test time, I performed outlier rejection, so in order to have more better estimate of homography. This method works well and was one of the state-of-the-art method at that time, because it was the first to solve this problem of fetoscopic mosaicing on a large-scale data set coming from various modalities and moving away from the classical handcrafted feature as well. But it had issues, as with time it accumulates drift during the mosaicing process. So then we started looking at how we can get more stable features that can help with registration. So we started looking at vessel segmentation, or having semantic understanding of this fetoscopic environment. This helps in overcoming some of the visibility challenges, such as the floating particles or varying illumination, because vessels are provide very stable features. But again, there is some problem in this environment as well, because vessels are not always visible in all the scenes, or sometimes they are so thin that the segmentation algorithm tends to fail and miss these vessels. So then the registration that totally rely on vessels tend to fail. So then with one of my students last year, Alabi, we started looking at optical flow or deep learned flow fields, and using these optical flow based features, in particularly from FlowNet, we use these features for registration and mosaicing, and we found that it provided more stable registration, and it also helped to remove outliers that occur because of, let's say, floating particles going around in the scene. So let's quickly have a look at some of the results, just to compare what these methods are providing us. So as I mentioned, with regression method, it did help in creating a mosaic, but there was noticeable drift in this method. Vessel-based gives quite reliable mosaic, and so does deep flow based method. But as soon as there is a scene where the vessels are not very clearly visible, the mosaic tends to fail. And while in the deep learn flow field, this still works. So with this, we tested these algorithms on a data set of 6 videos, six short clips from Fetoscopy. But since there is a lot of variation between different cases recorded in Fetoscopy, and also a lot of variation that comes from data captured at different centers, so this we need to go beyond these 6 cases. So in an effort towards having generalized algorithms for the set task of scene understanding in Fetoscopy and for registration for mosaicing, we collaborated with researchers from IIT and St. Anna and Politecnico di Milano last year to organize a challenge in EndoWest, which was a challenge that provided the very first large-scale multi-center fetoscopy data set of 24 patients, again recorded from 2 different centers. The challenge received a quite exceptional response from the community. You can visit our challenge website, and also the data is now available for research in this area. So moving further, so mosaicing help us understand some parts of the fetoscopic scene, but a fetoscopy video is about 30 minutes in duration, and there are several events taking place, such as occlusions because of the port or because of the presence of fetus, and also presence of tool while oblating, or the clear view environment as well. For mosaicing particularly, we are interested in the clear view part, and also from clinical point of view, the searchers are more interested in the clear view parts where they can clearly see the vessels. So in an attempt to move toward that, we actually design a method for event detection or in fetoscopy. So this method that we presented at IPCAI in 2021 was a spatiotemporal model that used CNN for spatial encoding of information, and temporal encoding was done using LSTM. And through differential learning, we were able to do scene event identification in the fetoscopy environment. So moving further towards fetal well-being, so mosaicing or fetoscopy is one area. Another area is ultrasound imaging for fetus, where ultrasound is one of the very commonly used imaging modality for assessing fetus growth or estimating the time to delivery. For getting a very accurate fetal biometry, the sonographers identify the 3 standard planes on head, abdomen, and femur, and then takes specific measurements on these planes by putting some key landmarks, and using these landmarks estimate the biometry. For this particular procedure for fetal biometry estimation, this can be a very time-consuming task, because especially in the case of less experienced sonographer, and it's subject to intra-operator and inter-operator variabilities. Through AI, we can help in reducing these variabilities, and AI can also serve as an expert for trainee sonographers. So in an attempt towards automating this task, we designed a fetal biometry estimation approach, where we used segmentation, anatomical site segmentation, and scale recovery, and then through region fitting in these segmentation masks, we were able to estimate the biometry, and then we were able to compare it with the clinically measured one, and found that the variabilities or the obtained biometry was within the acceptable range. The problem with this kind of approach is that getting annotations for segmentation is quite time consuming. And we need expert annotations here from clinicians. So again, it's time consuming and also costly for the surgeons as well, as they don't have that much amount of time. So for making this kind of approach even more, or fetal biometry even more robust, together with researchers and academics from Tel Aviv University and Tel Aviv Medical Center, this year at MICAI, we actually are going to present our work on Biometry Net, which is a landmark-based approach for fetal biometry estimation. So here we obtain the annotations which are exactly in the same way the clinicians are recording these annotations during the ultrasound procedure. So something they are very familiar with, and something which is much more easier to obtain and less time consuming compared to the segmentation mask. We validated the landmark-based approach on two publicly available data set, and you can check out our work, and also the code is freely available as well. So if I now talk about surgical scene understanding, workflow analysis is one of the very first step towards understanding surgical scene and towards building context-aware computer-assisted intervention systems. Through workflow analysis, we can monitor surgical phases, we can optimize staff scheduling. This can also assist the surgeon in determining how much time is left towards finishing a particular phase, for example, or also it can also help in assessing the skill of surgeon and for training surgeon, and how much more experience he needs to be a more qualified consultant. Again, it can also alert in any kind of complications that can occur. So during for surgical workflow analysis for a particular procedure, the procedure is broken down into phases, or you can also call it steps, as you can see over here. And then we come up with algorithms that can automatically detect these phases. So at WISE, we are working on various types of surgical procedures and performing surgical workflow analysis for these procedures. One of our student, Itong, in SRV team, he is looking at sacrococcygeal surgery, where in this surgery, this is a treatment for pelvic organ prolapse. And in this particular surgery, this is about 5 hours long, 4 to 5 hours long procedure, which is very different, and it's very different to the publicly available data sets or cholecystectomy surgery, which most of the MICAI community or CAI community is working on. So there are various challenges which are actually became more visible when we started looking at this particular type of surgical environment. So we do workflow analysis, and we use sequence models for this kind of task. But then very recently, we came up with this approach, which is based on transition retrieval rather than classifying each segment or each frame into the workflow class they belong to. We started looking at finding where one phase is transitioned into another, so start and end of a phase. For this, we used reinforcement learning and Q-learning technique, and this is one of the work that we will be presenting at MICAI this year. And then we are also looking at with our clinicians, neurosurgeons, we are looking at workflow analysis in pituitary surgery, that is endoscopic pituitary edema resection. So my colleague Adrito, he is particularly focusing his research on this surgery, where with the help of our clinicians, we have divided this surgery into 3 phases and 7 steps. and we are designing workflow analysis techniques for that can reduce the volatility or the oscillatory behavior of the prediction models during the inference of workflow. So, as I said before, workflow analysis is one of the first steps towards understanding surgical scene. The next steps are understanding the tool presence, or which type of tools are present or where they are located, and also going fine grained. So understanding what kind of actions the surgeon is performing, for example, when doing suturing or when doing different fine grained steps or actions within the steps. So in this regard, very recently, my colleagues they are organizing this challenge at MECAI for surgical instrument segmentation and for action recognition. As part of this challenge, we have released 50 robotic assisted radical prostatectomy procedure videos, which are annotated for segmentation and also annotated for different fine-grained actions. So I encourage you to actually visit the challenge website to learn more about this challenge and also consider participating as well. So another topic in the context of laparoscopic surgery that we are looking at is de-smoking or removing smoke from surgical environment. This is one of the very challenging part of laparoscopic surgery, because sometimes when the surgeon is performing the surgery and cutting the tissue, the smoke can be so large that they have to stop the procedure and wait for the smoke to settle down or can be removed from one of the port and then start the procedure. So to handle these kind of situations, what we started looking at was designing de-smoking approaches that can virtually remove the smoke from the scene so that they can better give the surgeon better understanding of the scene. For this, we have recently published this work, which is based on cycle GAN and unpaired image-to-image registration, image-to-image translation. For smoke removal, where we propose some novel loss functions that work towards removing or modeling the smoke and then removing the smoke from the scene. Again, the data set that we used in this particular task is available online on our center website. So if you are interested, please do visit our website to learn more about it. So now, I talked about the laparoscopic vision and different types of advancements that we have done so far towards understanding laparoscopic environment and towards understanding the procedure, surgical procedure as well. The second category that I classified in the beginning of my presentation is endoscopic vision, or where the environment is narrow and confined, and where the endoscope is moving in a very constrained tube-like environment, which is deforming as well, and where the scene is quite textureless as well. So a lot of challenges from the dynamically changing nature of this scene. In this aspect, together with one of our visiting students from Tianjin University in China, we started looking at classification of different anatomical sites in upper gastrointestinal endoscopy, where with this kind of classification, this can help in eliminating blind spots during the procedure to identify, so that the clinician doing the procedure localizes all the relevant target sites for this procedure for identifying any abnormalities in the tract. And then it can also help in automatically generating photo documentation for these kind of procedures. Another area that we are looking at in WISE is the GI detection in colonoscopy, particularly my colleague Juana, and also one of our spin-out company, Odeon Vision, is involved in this research, where Juana is designing spatiotemporal algorithms for detecting polyps, such that they reduces miss rates and reduces false positive, and also increases temporal stability for the detection. Odeon Vision in particularly, they now have two CE-mark products in market, which aims at detecting and analyzing or characterizing polyps in surgical environment. And also now they have a product called Lecadu, which is for the upper GI tract analysis as well in real time. So so this is very exciting, because these applications, like AI applications, are already now translated into surgery, and which is giving us a heads up towards what else can be done for in terms of having AI in surgery, and how we can actually support clinicians' decision during different procedures. And another topic in this context is also endoscopic navigation, where in medical robotics, there are now devices being developed, which are like flexible probes or robots that can perform endoscopic navigation or endoscopic procedure. So all these robots are mainly in design and development and testing phase. For these kind of systems in general, we also want these systems to have an automated capabilities of navigating in the surgical environment. For this, in this context, our team is involved in one of the European project called EndoMapper, where the aim is to build a 3D map of the organ and to localize the endoscope in the colonoscopy environment for providing better navigation or better localization of the target site in this environment. So within this context, this year at MICAI, again in EndoVis Challenge, we are organizing a challenge which is based on 3D reconstruction during colonoscopy, where we have made available the camera pose and depth information from simulated data and also from real data. And the task is to perform localization and depth estimation in this particular environment. So again, quite exciting directions that we are taking towards bringing AI in the clinical surgical environment. And now, to give you a little bit flavor of the kind of devices we are developing at WISE for assisting surgeons during the surgical procedures, I'm going to talk about a particular miniature robot that we are designing for intratympanic steroid injection delivery. So this particular robot that we are designing it will be used for drug delivery for hearing loss, and hearing loss is affects more than 500 million people worldwide. During the treatment for this this condition, one of the commonly done treatment is doing injections at the back of the ear, where this surgeon or ENT surgeon needs to have a very steady hand and precise targeting of the region in order to avoid any damage to the nearby anatomies. And a damage in this scenario can actually even result in a permanent hearing loss. So to facilitate our ENT surgeons, we are working in close collaboration with them, and my colleague Lucas has been working on developing and designing this very novel soft robot for the intratympanic steroid injections. Here you can see the prototype of this robot and the working example of this robot. This prototype, which is particularly shown over here, is 8 millimeters in diameter, so where where this is 2x the size of what is needed to be taken into clinics. Again, the camera that is used here is a very miniature camera, so the feed that we get from here is quite poor compared to what a surgeon can see during an otoscopy procedure. So for testing this system and for experimentation, we needed to have a setup which is near to the clinical setup. For that, my colleague, he designed ear canal phantom by 3D printing from patient ear scans and then coating this 3D printed model with the pigmented silicone rubber to create skin-like texture. So this is what we get or what we see from the miniature endoscopic camera in this particular environment. So the next task was if we can make this small robot, miniature robot, navigate in this environment automatically. So for that, we needed to build understanding of this surgical scene. So to do that, we looked into segmentation. So segmentation of anatomical sites, where particularly the sites that we were interested in were tympanic membrane, ambo, and malleus, where once the detection or segmentation is performed, we perform some post-processing to identify the quadrant, the safest quadrant, and the target point, which is needed for the insertion for the steroid injection. So here you can see a demo of this technique in action, where the target is getting detected and tracked by the robot. So once we have localized the target, this can also be used for controlling the robot, which we call visual serving. So automatically controlling the actuators of the robot so that the robot gets aligned to the target position. So this is something that we are currently looking at. And another aspect that, of course, apart from miniaturizing or further improving the design of this robot, we are interested in improving scene understanding, particularly going from simulated or this phantom data to real data, which looks different from the simulated environment because it has patient variability as well. This is one of the work which recently also received the Best Innovation Award at the Hamlin Robotics Symposium. To sum up, so I presented quite a range of techniques from the AI side for surgery, where these techniques are driving us towards having context awareness in OR. They can provide an overlay of the detected sites or the anatomies of interest to the surgeon during the procedure, and they can support during in decision support as well. This will be something like augmenting them or overlaying them on the existing setup, or it could be on a sideways setup so that the surgeon can slowly get trained to these kinds of systems. And on another side, we are developing novel robotic systems, soft robotic systems, which can enable high precision, robustness, and real-time and safe surgery and guidance during these surgical procedures. I would also like to mention that existing robotic systems, which are already there, which are commercially available and widely used, these systems are manually operated. None of them currently have any AI capabilities. With the kind of algorithms that we are working on, and in future, these can be integrated with these existing robotic systems as well, so that the task can be in some way semi-automated while keeping the control with the surgeon, but also providing support and guidance during the surgical procedure. So with this, I would like to thank all my colleagues at SRV Group and Vice Center and all my collaborators, because without them, all this research that I actually showcased today was not possible. So thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this talk and listening. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sophia, for sharing all this fascinating work with us. I have a whole bunch of questions actually, so I'll start, and then everybody else, please don't hesitate to continue writing in yours as well. So, going back to the first application you shared, the Fetoscopy stitching algorithm. So it seems to be working quite well by now, right? So you've managed to sort of overcome the problem of these smooth areas where there are no blood vessels, and track probably using some texture that you're seeing there. So sort of at the current state of affairs, how do you see the main challenges for actually applying this algorithm in clinical use? Is it like what's there left to do? Is it the data scale up? Is it like UX and actually having this online in front of the surgeon, and how are they going to look at it? What are the main sort of next steps on the road to actual clinical application?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. So yes, to some extent, mosaicing we have solved it, but this is only looking at certain portions of the surgery, like a few seconds long portions of the surgery where the scene is very clear, and then we have only looked at a subset of patient where specifically in fetoscopy there is a lot of variability involved. So certainly having more robustness and more real-time solutions before we actually start deploying them is one thing that is necessary. And then again, from the UX side, we need to, one of the things that we haven't looked at is that what kind of interface that we can provide to clinicians. So certainly having a UX which gives surgeon flexibility and full control on the procedure at the same time having an expanded field of view would be interesting. And then third point is that with mosaicing currently we are doing mapping, but we are not doing any localization. So what would be interesting is that when the surgeon is going around, he should be able to localize to the same position when he is going back and forth. So something that we are actually moving towards these days. Yeah.
So one of the things that goes around that, I understand, is actually sort of scene recognition, right? So understanding when you're looking at the placenta and when you're looking at other areas of the fetus, etc. So yeah, actually, I had another question about the surgical stages recognition. So for the one you showed, how many of these sacrocoloplexies, excuse me if I mispronounced it, did you actually have? How many surgeries do you find are needed in your experience to do this kind of stages recognition? Because it's always so hard, especially in these rare surgeries, to get enough videos. How many videos do you think are needed typically?
So a general kind of rule of thumb is at least having 50 procedures. So of
50.
course, of course, there is no upper bound in deep learning. So with about 50 videos, the results that we are showing right now, they are already looking very promising. And especially in this kind of procedure, there are some particular phases in which the clinicians are more interested in, or timing these certain phases so that they can quantify the skill level of a training. So with this regard, we actually started looking at a transition aware network where we can actually focus on these kind of phases and then measuring these phases. One of the very big challenge that we have in these 5 hours long procedure is that there are parts where the surgeon is taking break, so the scope is idle, or the scope is outside the patient body. These are some of the conditions which are not studied yet in the publicly available data, for example, the cholecystectomy data sets. So the more we move away from cholecystectomy, we start seeing more challenges which are very specific to different types of procedures, I would say.
Okay, nice. So you're saying with 50 surgeries, you're actually seeing ability to generalize? Because it sounds like, I guess, there's quite a lot of data about the stages you're interested in. Is sort of what's helping here.
So yes, for the specific type, for the specific phases that we are interested, or the clinicians are interested, we are already getting very promising results with 50 videos. Of course, at the back end, we are already working on scaling up the data set, because it's a continuous process. We are getting more data annotated, and feeding it into the system. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a very sort of promising news in general for these surgical video applications, right? Because always the worry is, how many surgeries can we get, and each patient is different, and to what degree does the wealth of information we have in one particular surgery, right? Because it's ours and many things are happening. To what degree does that wealth of information help us when we're going to the next patient? So yeah, it's cool that you're seeing these results. Even with a 50 video data set. Okay, we have a question here from Tao from Abbott about the 3D reconstruction of colonoscopy. So the question is, what are the camera orientation and travel depth info are available, right? So is there any camera orientation information, I guess, or is the reconstruction being done only from the video? And to generalize the question, yeah, this is quite interesting. So what do you see the benefits of integrating or leveraging non-vision sensors or info to assist computer vision, right? So in a standard colonoscope, we only have video. So I think Tao is asking, do you think having additional sensors is helpful or is required here?
Yes, it's a very, very good question. So starting with the first question that he has, with the current data set that we have made available, it's a simulated data set where we are providing the information of the orientation of the camera and the depth information, so the depth maps of the scene. And then we have also, together with in partner with the Endomapper project, we have released the data set of real videos where we have using collab or structure from motion technique. We did reconstructions and then from endoscopic vision, and then visually inspected these reconstructions in a small, let's say, segments to validate that the reconstruction is valid or good enough, and then we provide this kind of data for registration or for reconstruction. So and then coming back to the second part, where having additional sensors. So definitely having additional sensors on top of vision is a plus. And of course, we want these sensors to be there, but in the current setting, we don't have them in the current form factors of the scope, or the current clinically approved equipment does not have these sensors. So vision is where we have to rely the most for now. But I know there are devices being developed or being designed, which in future will have the capabilities of having additional information or sensors as well, while keeping the same scale of these devices, which can be approved in clinical practices.
So I guess it's a yes for that. So when we do have these additional sensors, yeah, it's expected to be quite helpful. One final question from Mark regarding the new EndoVis challenge. So this challenge contains multiple tasks, right? There's tool segmentation and stages recognition. So a question on the methodologies here. Do you find that it is effective to do multitask learning for these challenges? For instance, to have a single model or a foundational model that is learning multiple tasks. In the non-medical field, these foundational models are getting very much in vogue, but is the amount of medical data sufficient to develop these multitask solutions?
So definitely, I think Mark is referring to the RAP 50 challenge, EndoVis challenge that my colleagues are organizing. So yes, as part of this challenge, we have 3 subtasks. One is instrument segmentation, another one is the fine-grain action recognition, and the third one is actually having a multitask network which can perform both of these tasks in parallel. So definitely, this is where we are moving towards, and having networks that can perform multitasking will be more effective than actually doing step-by-step learning in these kind of environments.
Okay, thanks. So maybe in the future, yeah, we'll have one AI to rule them all, right? It will, like a physician, it will recognize, yeah, how to stitch fetoscopies and stages of cholecystectomies and everything. But yeah, eventually.
Yeah, eventually, yes, and eventually this will be possible. But at the same time, we don't want to take the control away from clinicians at all. Unlike self-driving cars, where we are moving towards automation, here we are moving towards semi-automation. So surgeons will have the full control. At the same time, he or she will have more information available during the procedures for better decision.
Sure. Yeah. Even if we can get to an ADAS, yeah, like the simplest car that's available today is something, you know, or that the features that were available for cars years ago, if we have something basic there that we can get good enough and stable enough for clinical practice, that's going to be a big win to this whole community, I think. Yeah. So we're all staying humble, obviously. Okay. So thank you very much, Sophia. It was a fascinating talk and really great to see also these multiple fields and multiple use cases and the connections between them technologically. Everybody in the audience can, of course, feel free to contact Sophia with any further questions. The email is right here up on the screen. And we'll see you again at future webinars and meetups. So thanks again, Dr. Bano. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks a lot, everyone. Yeah.
All right, we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.